Okay, let's talk about the matchup. And this is going to be a real good one. Tampa Bay is coming in playing some really good ball. They've won 3 straight. They're now the NFC South leaders. And they're going to have to hold off Atlanta. And since they don't know the tiebreaker, they have to hold off Atlanta. So it shows you that. And their schedule really opens up nicely after this. So this is their last big test. And if they can win this one, it could really help solidify their standing as far as and even in particular, interesting, if you take a look at the opposing trends, these are good spots for both teams. The Bucs have covered 9 of their last 12 as a road dog, while the Chargers are 8-1 straight up ATS this year as a favorite. So they're really in a good. This is Chargers. They're supposed to win games. They win them. That's been their MO this year. Of course, at some point, maybe it comes towards the playoffs. Maybe it comes next year. At some point, then you have to step up and win the games you're not expected to win.
Right.
But they're taking care of business. That's also important when you're rebuilding, even though this looks like a quick rebuild, and we're not really surprised about that. Next week, the Chargers have the big one at home against Denver. But let's talk about this one first. What have you seen so far about the Bucs that you think might give the Chargers the most problem?
Yeah, considering Herbert suffered an ankle injury against the Chiefs, that is really where I'm honed in on this week because you have the Buccaneers pass rush coming in. You have Vita Vea. You have guys all over that defensive line that I think can give the Chargers offensive line a lot of problems. And yeah, I'm really looking at that, and it's kind of, we saw how Herbert played with an ankle sprain earlier this year, and then he finally started to feel like himself by the Denver game. But this new ankle injury he picked up against Kansas City, how well is he able to move against that Tampa pass rush is kind of what I would watch. In the secondary, they're not going to have Antoine Winfield, which
That's
I would
big.
say that is a win for the Chargers a little bit. But I am still a little bit concerned about this game. Just also the Buccaneers, as you say, are really hot offensively coming in to this game.
Oh, yeah.
They're top 5 in a bunch of categories. And they're getting it without necessarily top talent. They don't have Godwin. They are missing some offensive line pieces. They haven't even necessarily gotten the best games out of Baker, who I didn't think played that great this week, but they still won. So that offense that Liam Cohen is really working with has been good, even after Dave Canales left to Carolina. I think that this is going to be a challenge for the Chargers, a little bit of a different offensive look than they've seen the whole season.
Okay. What specifically is it because they do bring a 2-back backfield, and Irving has been really good as a rookie, so it's been a big help. I know the Bucs didn't, even though Canales was good enough to get a head coaching job, they didn't run the ball effectively under Canales, but they sure are running the ball effectively. And again, to be fair, Canales didn't have Bucky Irving and Rashad White.
Yeah.
And Sean Tucker is a number 3, who's a pretty good number 3 running back too.
Yeah, and I think the running game has opened up a lot of what they can do in the passing game too. And as Mike Evans gets back into the fold, he came back from injury. You have that and the run game working. I think it's a little bit of a challenge, especially if they can get some passable offensive line performances. And I think that's what you're seeing with this offense is the strength of that running game.
Yeah, besides Winfield, there's also, as you can see, all those players in red are injured players.
Yeah.
Some might play, some might not, but there are injured players that are not on injured reserve on the depth chart here at Ourlads, and you can check it out. The Bucs players
it does feel like December football for both the Chargers and the Bucs going into this game.
Absolutely. This is a big one for both teams. Of course, the Chargers have lost 2 out of 3, so they don't want to keep losing. Tampa Bay, of course, we know they're in first place. They need to stay ahead of Atlanta, who will be in Las Vegas on Monday night. So what do you think about this matchup? What do you think is going to be the biggest concern matchup wise for the Bucs?
Oof. It's kind of funny because this is like a strength versus strength, weakness versus weakness kind of situation. The strength of the Chargers is their defense. They have the best scoring defense in the NFL. The strength of the Buccaneers is the offense, which is not something we say about the Buccaneers historically very often. And then the Bucs defense is not so great. The Chargers offense is one that has done just enough to make sure that they get the win thanks to their defense. So when you take a look at this matchup, I think the toughest thing for the Bucs is, will they be able to continue to run the ball as effectively as they have over the course of the last few weeks? They're averaging just under 182 rushing yards a game since coming out of the bye week. They managed to keep the run game going with Rashad and Sean Tucker last week against the Raiders without Bucky Irving. He played a couple of snaps and then he was out for the rest of the game. Can they keep that going against a Chargers team that's pretty good against the run? I think they're allowing like 4.4 yards per carry, which is a little bit less than what the Raiders are allowing. But on the road, against an 8-5 team that's fighting for their own playoff spot, you have to be able to protect the football and control the tempo, control the clock. The Bucs are only going to be able to do that running the football. And if you cannot run effectively and you're putting Baker in situations where it's 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, and the Chargers are allowed to pin their ears back and come after them with everything that they've got, it could turn into a situation like we saw against the Raiders where they had 3 straight possessions where they turned the ball over. There was an interception, which was just a great play by Chason. You have to tip your cap. It wasn't anything that Baker did wrong. It was just a great play. Then he was sacked because they brought more blitzers than Rashad White could pick up by himself. He gets sacked, he loses the football, and then throws another interception, which was 100% a bad decision by Baker Mayfield. So, when you get into those situations against a team that has protected the football all year, you cannot lose the turnover battle on the road against a defense like the Chargers. So you have to protect the football. You have to control the clock. So it's going to be all about, can Rashad White and Sean Tucker continue at this pace if Bucky Irving can't go?
And speaking of whether Irving can go or not, touch up on those potential injuries for the team then. So what do you think right now? Because we're talking on Thursday. So what is your guesstimate on whether or not we're going to see Bucky?
I would say, I would say he's going to be active. Now, he was active last week. Tried to run a little bit, re-aggravated the back injury because he's dealing with a back and a hip injury. So I would say Bucky's going to be active on the roster. How active he is in the game is a completely different story. If it's the same script as it was last week, then the Bucs could be in trouble. But if he's dealing with the injury like he was against the Panthers, he ended up going on to be the NFC Offensive Player of the Week. So I don't think he's going to be a game day scratch. He's a tough kid, and he wants desperately to be out on the field helping this football team. He knows what's on the line the rest of this year. The Bucs are in a situation where they can lose one game at the most the rest of the season and still make the playoffs. He wants to be out there. He wants to help. So I would say that he'll be active. How much he plays is a completely different story.
So last week, what was the biggest issue with the running game itself? Again, you would think, all right, if Bucky can't play or if he's banged up, well, they do have Tucker, so he could pick up the slack, and maybe you just give White a big workload as well. What was not working there last week?
The run game overall last week, still performed pretty well. They finished with 152 rushing yards as a team. Rashad had over 100 all-purpose yards. Sean Tucker had a big, I believe it was like a 36, 38-yard run late in the game to set up a Rashad White touchdown to really kind of seal things away. So it was still going well. It just goes better with Bucky. You know,
Yeah, sure.
take a look. You know, the week before against the Carolina Panthers, the Bucs ran for 236 yards as a team. Bucky had over 150 of that on his own. So he's that player where when he's not playing, the Bucs don't really have that guy late in games against a tired defense that can all of a sudden just really house one from anywhere on the field. Rashad, you know, he's a good running back, and I don't want this to come across as, you know, I think that he's less than Bucky. He's just different.
Yeah.
So, you know, he's not as elusive. He's not as quick. He's stronger. He's bigger. But, you know, Bucky leads the NFL in missed tackle percentage. It's very rare that the first guy to get to Bucky Irving brings him down. That's not the same thing with Rachaad White. That's not the same thing with Sean Tucker. And Sean Tucker's more of that short yardage situation kind of guy, but he can still break one off. Like I mentioned, he had almost a 40-yard run last week. So it's not that the run game doesn't work without Bucky. It's just so much more dangerous when he is available.
And then defensively, again, Winfield, do you know how long he's going to be out approximately?
If I remember correctly, Todd Bowles said that it was going to be multiple games.
Okay.
What that means, we have no idea. Could be 2, could be the rest of the regular season. We're really not sure at this point. So I would say it's a pretty safe bet that he'll miss next week. You would hope that he returns for the Cowboys game the weekend of Christmas, but there's really just no telling. Todd Bowles isn't going to just, you know, divulge that information.
Sure.
I would say it's a good sign that he hasn't been placed on IR yet.
Yes.
But
sure.
I guess it really depends on how he's feeling and how he continues to test it out.
I mean, I know Winfield was out earlier this season when their defense looked like almost the Bengals defense for about a month. What was going on? What was wrong? What was it just didn't look good at all for a little bit. I mean, it's got to be more than Winfield's absence.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, they started the season, you know, they looked good against Washington. They were one of the few teams there for a while that could actually contain Jaden Daniels, but you start the season off without Kalijah Cansey, and that's a huge loss. He was out for the first, I believe it was like 3 or 4 weeks. You lost Antoine Winfield Jr. on the last defensive play of that game. He was out for a couple of weeks. You know, the edge rushers just were not getting the job done. Yaya Diaby was a non-factor. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka was a non-factor. You had KJ Brett just getting absolutely roasted by tight ends and running backs coming out of the backfield. So you've had injury issues on the defensive side of the ball all season long. I think Vita Vea missed a game or two early in the year. You had Logan Hall, who started off like a house on fire. He was fantastic. I was talking him up like crazy on Locked On Bucs, and then he's disappeared off the face of the earth. Greg Gaines has been dealing with injury. William Golston has been playing through injury. So the Bucs have not had their entire starting defense one time this season. It's been just week after week after week. We're constantly talking on this show and you know on Bucs outlets about, you know, another key defensive player being out for a week or 2 weeks or placed on the IR. Servassier Dennis was a huge part of what Todd Bowles wanted to be able to do on defense, and he loses his season to shoulder surgery. So they haven't had the pieces on the field to allow Todd to be Todd and to call his style of defense. He's had to make a lot of adjustments on the fly and deal with what personnel, what practice squad player, what Starbucks barista they have playing on the field that week.